The first thing the true heiress Zhu Qingyao did upon her return was to pull out the list for her grandmother's birthday banquet. Sister's list has shad fish priced at 10 taels each, but the West Market only charges 2 taels, and this Mingqian Longjing tea is half the price at the South City Tea House. Calculating this entire page, it's a full 2,000 taels more expensive than market prices. Her gentle words cut like knives. It seemed my embezzlement was already treated as fact. Father looked at her with admiration, while brother glared at me in fury. Unlike my past life, I didn't argue my case this time. With a faint smile, since my sister is so capable, why not entrust this banquet to her? At grandmother's birthday feast later, all the dignitaries and nobles were vomiting and suffering from diarrhea. The infatuated princess, who adored my brother, couldn't secure a chamber pot in time and had an explosive public accident. The entire capital was left in shock. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. I was reborn on the day Zhu Qingyao returned home, just as in my previous life. That banquet list I had meticulously prepared for 3 days, with just a few words from her. It became proof that I was attempting to embezzle the Zhu family's money. Before I could defend myself, father looked at her with admiration in his eyes. Qingyao truly takes after your mother, so capable at such a young age. My brother Zhu Chengxian, meanwhile, glared at me with fury. Do you think you can embezzle money just because you're no longer a member of the Zhu family? Add the real price back immediately. How dare you deceive even your own family? I thought for a moment. I didn't explain that these were the freshest shad fish, specifically requested by grandmother. The Mingqian Longjing tea was also prepared for the yet-to-be-married sister-in-law, Princess Joan. She's extremely picky about her tea. Only the finest quality will do. The other precious ingredients were also chosen to suit the tastes of high-ranking officials and nobles. She simply lowered her head and admitted her mistake. This price was quoted to me by an outside shop. It's my fault for being too lazy to compare each one personally, which led to being deceived. Although Shiyun has learned some basics of household management by grandmother's side, my vision is still limited after all. Seeing how clever and capable you are today, why not leave the task of organizing grandmother's birthday banquet to you? Little sister, I admitted my mistake so quickly. It was beyond Zhu Chengxuan's expectations. He froze for a moment, then looked at Zhu Qingyao. Meeting her pleading eyes, he wavered slightly. Father pondered for a moment before nodding. It's not entirely impossible. I've heard that Qingyao handled all sorts of household affairs at her adoptive parents' home from a very young age. The excitement in Zhu Qingyao's eyes was nearly impossible to conceal, but she quickly suppressed her smile and looked at me timidly. Sister, isn't this inappropriate? Brother mentioned you've been managing everything in the Zhu family's backyard, and now I'm taking over as soon as I return. I patted her hand. Why stand on ceremony, sister? You are the rightful daughter of the Zhu family, and I've merely been managing these household affairs in your stead. Now that you've returned, it's only natural to return them to their rightful owner. It's just a pity our mother passed away so early, leaving you without the chance to see her again. She mentioned Madame Zhu, who had succumbed to illness years ago. Zhu Qingyao's eyes reddened as she threw herself into her brother's embrace. It's all my fault for returning too late. I couldn't even see mother one last time. Zhu Chengxian held her tightly. Mother would have been overjoyed to see how graceful and beautiful Qingyao has become. Father sighed. Your mother would be happy to know how capable you are, able to handle grandmother's birthday banquet at such a young age. Watching their father-daughter affection, I found it utterly ridiculous. In my past life, when Zhu Qingyao mentioned the high prices on the list, I couldn't understand the look in my brother and father's eyes. I only remembered what my brother had told me before he brought her home. Youngyun, you've grown up in the Zhu family since childhood, as close to me and father as our own flesh and blood. Even with Qingyao's return, you'll always remain a daughter of the Zhu family, still our family. I took it to heart, truly believed they were all family. So faced with Zhu Qingyao's questioning, I smiled and explained. Even ingredients have their good and bad distinctions. For grandmother's birthday banquet, we must use the finest. Before I could finish speaking, her tears had already fallen. It's all my fault for growing up in a merchant's household, counting coins every single day. It was too vulgar of me. Not as refined as my sister. That's not the case. I argued my point firmly, presenting the comparisons I had collected between the quality and prices of various ingredients. Proving that the prices I listed were indeed the normal market rates. Only the finest quality was selected. Grandmother had previously consulted a fortune teller who predicted she would face a calamity this year. The more grand and lively this 60th birthday celebration became, The more distinguished the guests in attendance, the safer she would be. That's why this birthday banquet must be perfect in every aspect. Fortunately, father and elder brother understand the stakes involved. The banquet remains under my direction, living up to everyone's expectations. I organized grandmother's birthday celebration with extraordinary splendor. Father Zhu Guangju's filial piety caught the eye of his mentor, the old prime minister. He personally wrote a memorial recommending him as the next prime minister. Even Prince Qi, who had some reservations about the elder brother, finally spoke up to advance the marriage between him and his daughter, Princess Joan. As for Zhu Qingyao, she smoothly entered the social circle of noble ladies, but after everyone got what they wished for, what I received in return wasn't praise or gratitude, but overwhelming slander instead. Zhu Qingyao forged a fake receipt. They accused me of taking kickbacks and embezzling 2,000 taels of silver. The fake receipt was quite crude. One glance was enough to tell the texture was off. I had thought father and brother were discerning men who wouldn't fall for her little tricks. Who would have thought they would pretend not to notice? Indulging Zhu Qingyao's mischief ultimately led to me being accused of embezzling 20,000 taels of silver from the Zhu family. They sent me to the authorities and had me thrown into prison. Later, as I lay dying in that cell, Zhu Qingyao came specifically to show off. The Imperial Astronomical Bureau calculated that a calamitous star has descended upon the capital. Minister Li sent word to father, it's the Zhu family. Only then did I understand. In truth, father and elder brother knew very well in their hearts, apart from a few shops and manors in the dowries of the grandmother and mother, the Zhu family only had their official salaries. During the years I managed the household, all expenses combined didn't even reach 20,000 taels. They deliberately favored Zhu Qingyao, trying to drive me to my death. They just wanted to firmly pin this ill-omened identity on me, lest it arouse suspicion in the palace, to secure their own bright future. Fortunately, heaven has eyes. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the moment when everything began. The news of Zhu Qingyao's return spread quickly. Within half a day, Princess Joan arrived with a large number of gifts. She and Zhu Chengxian had been engaged since last year, however. Prince Qi somewhat looked down on her brother's position as a minor official in the Ministry of Rights, and had been delaying the marriage arrangements. The son-in-law he truly preferred was the general of the southern garrison, but Princess Joan was deeply infatuated with her elder brother. Being the only daughter of Prince Qi, she was excessively doted upon. She forced Prince Qi to consent to their betrothal. Other unmarried couples in the capital would avoid impropriety, but Lady Joan, accustomed to doing as she pleased, paid no heed to such trivial formalities. She often came to the Zhu residence with great fanfare. Only, when my brother wasn't on leave, she would always come to see me. But today, she called me out by name. She was looking for Zhu Qingyao, the younger sister of my fiancé. When the Zhu family bowed in greeting, she pretended not to see me, deliberately leaving me standing. Yet she warmly took Zhu Qingyao's hand, unwrapping the gifts one by one to display them. Qingyao, I'm your sister-in-law. I was so happy to hear you've returned to the Zhu family. From now on, the Zhu household finally has a proper lady of the house. With you managing the household, I can rest assured. As she spoke, she shot me a sidelong glance, her eyes brimmed with disdain. Half a month ago, Princess Joan abruptly changed her attitude toward me, from her previous fiery enthusiasm to constant cold indifference. In my past life, I never knew why, but in this life, I understand all too well, because half a month ago, Zhu Chengxian had already found his biological sister, Zhu Qingyao. From that moment on, Princess Joan, it became clear that I wasn't Zhu Chengshuan's biological sister. This considerate sister-in-law naturally wanted to seek justice for the true heiress, to teach this cuckoo who occupied the nest, the fake heiress, a lesson, and to quickly win over the true sister who had descended from the heavens. I paid no heed to it. I merely knelt on one knee with an amused smile, watching her play the role of a motherly elder sister-in-law, doting on Zhu Qingyao with meticulous care. I watched as she took out various precious pieces of jewelry, adorning Zhu Qingyao with every single one. Lady Joan had always been accustomed to acting domineering. Her tone was always domineering. She didn't notice the flash of greed and resentment in Zhu Qingyao's eyes. That very night, Zhu Qingyao came to my courtyard. Dusk had already fallen. She was dressed in elaborate attire, wearing an extremely intricate flowing cloud gauze dress. She also adorned herself with a set of jadeite hair ornaments of exceptional clarity. Still not satisfied, she had several gold hairpins slantingly inserted, filling her bun to the brim. On her wrists she wore carved mutton fat white jade bracelets. Several large golden beads dangled from her waist. Her whole body glittered with jewels, illuminating the space 10 meters around her. She nearly startled the maid Xing'er out of her wits. Xing'er couldn't help but mutter under her breath, "Young mistress, the second young lady is like a moth fluttering about in a treasure basin. This is far too dazzling." She didn't know. The wealthy merchant foster father Zhu Qingyao spoke of was actually just a small street vendor. No one had taught her how to match jewelry. In her previous life, it was I who taught her after she returned home. At this time, she still lacked the knowledge and taste of a noble young lady. Zhu Qingyao twisted her body forward, pursing her lips. "Sister, the princess sent me many gifts today. I thought since courtesy demands reciprocity, I should also send her some gifts, otherwise, people might laugh at our Zhu family." Thinking I'm so ignorant of etiquette, I instantly understood her intention. Immediately following her words, I said, "Although the princess doesn't mind such formalities, your thoughtfulness in preparing a return gift truly shows your refined sensibilities. I've already prepared the keys to the family treasury. My original intention was to deliver them to you tomorrow, allowing you to personally select the gifts." Zhu Qingyao apparently hadn't expected things to proceed so smoothly. Momentarily taken aback, she quickly regained her composure, her cheeks slightly flushed. "You're always so thoughtful, sister. Perhaps you could accompany me tomorrow." "I just got back, it wouldn't be right for me to take the key alone," I persuaded her with a smile. "This Zhu residence is already your home, why be so hesitant?" Only then did Zhu Qingyao accept the keys. The corners of her mouth were practically trembling with suppressed delight. I specifically instructed her, "The 3,000 taels budgeted for this birthday banquet are also in the money box in the treasury. You may help yourself, sister." She grew even happier and made a promise of her own accord. "Elder sister, I told you this birthday banquet would only cost 1,000 taels. Just wait and see." I'll wait and see." I know Qingyao Zhu's background inside out. Since childhood, she frequently accompanied her adoptive father in and out of gambling dens. As she grew older, she developed some bad habits. For instance, even now, dressed in fine embroidered silk, her fingers unconsciously tapped lightly on the table. A habit picked up in the gambling den, 3 long, 2 short, concealing hidden meanings. When Zhu Chengxian found her, he was so overjoyed that he didn't bother to thoroughly investigate her past. Hearing that her adoptive parents had passed away, he could only feel heartache for her. He hid her in the manor to teach her some manners, then hastily brought her back. In her previous life, she entered the household already burdened with debts, secretly taking jewelry to pawn. I was soft-hearted back then. Knowing about it, I didn't expose her but instead helped cover it up. I even gave her all the allowance I'd saved over the years. No good deed goes unpunished. Now I shall play the villain, deliberately giving her the key to the storeroom, placing the rat into the rice jar with her own hands. The spectacle that followed was bound to be unforgettable. Half a month passed in a flash. And grandmother only arrived in the capital on the morning of the birthday banquet. Her carriage had broken down. We took several breaks on the road, delaying us for several days. The 3 of us siblings went together to the estate in the outskirts of the capital to fetch her. Upon hearing that Zhu Qingyao was hosting the birthday banquet this time, she was somewhat surprised. "Why wasn't it Shiyun? She holds a banquet for me every year and knows my preferences best." Zhu Chengxian had anticipated his grandmother might ask this question. He had already prepared his response. Qingyao grew up in a merchant family, so she's more familiar with ingredient prices. She had hosted numerous banquets for her adoptive parents and was quite experienced. Now that she's returned to her grandmother's side, she wants to fulfill her filial duties. Zhu Qingyao's eyes had already reddened, tears streaming down her face. Qingyao has never met her grandmother or mother. Now that mother is gone, I can only try my best to be filial to grandmother. Hearing her mention her mother, the grandmother sighed. "She's a good child, indeed." She closed her eyes in contemplation for a moment, removing the grey wooden bracelet from her own wrist. She personally slipped it onto Zhu Qingyao's. "This is your grandmother's gift for meeting you. Things will get better from now on." Zhu Qingyao choked out her thanks. But when she lowered her head and looked at the bracelet on her wrist, she couldn't help but frown. She was blaming her grandmother for being stingy. The day before yesterday, she specifically came to ask me about grandmother's preferences, indirectly inquiring about the gifts she usually gave to others. After she returned, Father Zhu Guangju presented precious scholars' treasures and over 10 renowned masterpieces of painting. Elder brother Zhu Chengxian also gifted many precious jewelry and fabrics. Our grandmother, with her well-stocked private treasury, naturally had to give gifts as well. I told her, Grandmother was devoted to Buddhist practices and placed little importance on material desires, but she had a particular fondness for green jade. During festivals and holidays, the gifts she gave to the younger members of the clan were mostly green jade trinkets. She must have already set her heart on it, after all. Apart from today's outfit, the gifts she received upon returning home, everything had already been sold off to pay the gambling debts. Now, instead of gifting her the precious jade she had hoped for, her grandmother gave her a plain grey wooden bracelet. How could she not be disappointed? Yet she didn't know this seemingly ordinary wooden bracelet was coated with specially crafted grey lacquer. Inside was thousand-year-old ebony inlaid with golden Sanskrit scriptures, truly priceless beyond measure. Though Zhu Qingyao spoke words of gratitude, the disappointment on her face remained unconcealed. All of this was noted by her grandmother. She shook her head slightly, a trace of displeasure flickering in her eyes, yet she didn't explain how precious that wooden bracelet was. After that, no matter how charmingly Zhu Qingyao tried to ingratiate herself, she remained aloof and indifferent, her expression frosty, no longer as close as before. By the time we reached home, Grandmother's expression had grown even colder. A sudden downpour had just passed. The front gate that had been clean when we departed at 3 to 5 a.m. was now utterly filthy. The ground was covered with accumulated mud and fallen leaves. The 2 red lanterns under the eaves had not been replaced. They were still the ones used during New Year's Eve. Now they were soaked with water. The already faded lanterns looked even more worn and shabby. Looking inward, the red cloth drapes that should have been hung in the courtyard were still not in place. There wasn't the slightest hint of a birthday celebration atmosphere. Grandmother's face darkened. The guests will arrive soon, yet the courtyard remains undecorated. And this filth before the hall hasn't been cleaned. Where have the cleaning servants gone? She didn't know. To demonstrate her competence after becoming the household manager, Zhu Qingyao sold off half the servants and maids in the residence. Sister, you've never done menial work, so you wouldn't understand. How could our household possibly need so many people for these simple tasks? The accumulated monthly allowances over the years do amount to significant expenses. At that time, father was quite pleased. He found Zhu Qingyao's words most reasonable. He lavished praise upon her while subtly reproaching me. Now there aren't enough servants at home and the division of labor is chaotic. It's normal for such problems to arise. Zhu Qingyao's face flushed slightly as she explained in a low voice. Grandmother, I did have the servants do it, only, before she could finish speaking, Princess John stepped down from the carriage. Her eyes lit up. She ran up to Princess John and tightly grasped her arm. Princess John quickly understood. He spoke up to help Zhu Qingyao out of the predicament. Qingyao just returned and is still struggling with managing the servants. These servants take advantage of Qingyao's kindness. Now that grandmother is back, it's the perfect time to discipline them. But for servants to dare bully their master like this, I suspect someone must have encouraged them. Zhu Qingyao's eyes darted, and she spoke with a feigned look of grievance. But the people who have a say in the household are all my family. Why would they order the servants to make things difficult for me? So she claimed, yet her gaze was directed unmistakably toward me. Grandmother gave a light hum. This is not the time to discuss such matters. Since Qingyao is managing the household, quickly find someone to deal with all this. Do not disgrace our Zhu family in front of the guests. Grandmother had spoken, and Zhu Qingyao dared not delay. She hurriedly agreed and went to summon the cleaning servants. Although Zhu Chengxian favored his younger sister, he didn't want any mishaps or embarrassments at today's birthday banquet. He immediately took responsibility. Today is my day off to celebrate grandmother's birthday at home anyway, so let me handle the arrangements for the hall and courtyard. But when he saw the servants setting up the items Zhu Qingyao had prepared, he couldn't help but frown. Sister, why did you buy such a small lantern, hanging under the eaves? It looks rather insignificant. These curtains are much shorter than they should be. They look so petty when hung up. And why isn't the color proper red? And why have the potted peonies we agreed on earlier been replaced with withered peonies? He fired off questions one after another. Zhu Qingyao lowered her head, stammering, Brother, I'm not yet familiar with the household, so I bought the wrong size. Zhu Chengshuan's frown deepened. He was about to speak again when the sound of a carriage already echoed at the front gate. The guests had already arrived. Only then did he stop his questioning and turn to receive the visitors. Zhu Qingyao breathed a sigh of relief and quickly darted into the backyard. The noble ladies stepping down from their carriages trod on the still muddy ground. Eyeing the somewhat comical decorations of the Zhu residence, they exchanged glances simultaneously. Their faces all bore hesitant expressions. Fortunately, Princess John showed great respect for Zhu Qingyao. She personally stood guard at the door, loudly calling out to the noble ladies to hurry inside. Qingyao has just returned and is already managing the household, so it's inevitable there might be some oversights. These servants are too cunning and don't do their work properly. Chengxian has already gone to discipline them. Her status is noble. It's clear she's here to back Xu Qingyao up. The young ladies forced smiles back onto their faces and warmly took Xu Qingyao's hands in theirs. Only then did Xu Chengxian feel as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders, but what he hadn't anticipated was how utterly unreliable Xu Qingyao would prove to be. Before the banquet officially began, visiting guests were first invited to the rear courtyard to admire the flowers and partake in tea. She hadn't prepared enough refreshments. Just for the ladies' side alone, all the teacups and fruit plates were exhausted. Meanwhile, the gentlemen in the south courtyard could only stare at empty tables, filling the awkward silence with endless chatter. Xu Chengxian personally rushed to the kitchen. Only then did we realize there weren't enough cups. Fortunately, a maid remembered that I had bought sufficient cups in previous years. Stored away in the pantry of the small kitchen, she hurried off to count them out. A crowd of people busied themselves washing the dust-covered cups, creating utter chaos. At last, the tea was served. Yet the guests all wore peculiar expressions, their gazes filled with unspoken meaning. Xu Chengxian took a sip himself and nearly spat it out. When Xing'e vividly described this scene to me, I nearly burst out laughing. One could easily imagine how furious Xu Chengxian, who had always cared deeply about face, must be at this moment. For no other reason, I had originally prepared Mingqian Longjing tea, made from the tenderest new buds picked before Qingming festival. It boasts the most delicate flavor and mellow taste. To save money, Xu Qingyao had chosen cheap, stale tea leaves. Even after the cook sifted them several times, there were still many broken bits. When boiling water was poured in, a layer soon floated to the surface, nearly covering the cup. A small sip revealed an unmistakable musty taste. The lady's side was even more chaotic. Xu Qingyao was so arrogant that she completely ignored the precautions I had marked in the booklet I gave her. When arranging the tea break, she ushered the wife of the Minister of the Court of Imperial Stud and Lady Zhong from the Duke of Wei's residence into the pavilion together. These two women were once bosom friends, but tore their friendship apart over competing for the same man. For over a decade afterward, they couldn't stand the sight of each other. When banquets in the capital invited both of them, they were always seated far apart, never at the same table. Yet Xu Qingyao remained completely unaware. Even seating the two of them side by side, the banquet had yet to begin. The two ladies were already engaged in a heated exchange. It wasn't until their grandmother, having heard the news, personally intervened that a brief moment of harmony was restored. She could no longer restrain herself. She had Xu Chengxian summon me to her courtyard. When I arrived, Xu Qingyao was kneeling on the ground. He protested in a hoarse, low voice that tea was adulterated by the merchant with inferior leaves. I've never tasted good tea before, so I couldn't tell the difference. Madam doesn't concern herself with such trivial matters, and elder sister never mentioned it to me either. I've only just returned home. How could I possibly know which ladies are close friends and which keep their distance? Grandma thought she made a valid point. She looked at me with displeasure. Shiyun, Qingyao has just returned. Why didn't you tell her about these details? I had anticipated this would happen. Presenting the booklet in hand, Grandmother, this booklet in my hand details all the matters requiring attention for the banquet. There are 2 copies of this booklet, one remains with me, while the other has been given to my younger sister. In the beginning, Xu Qingyao made a grand show of preparing for the birthday banquet. She even pretended to consult me several times in front of father. I held nothing back. I recounted to her all the dietary taboos of the capital's nobility that I had previously gathered. For example, the wife of the assistant minister of the court of state ceremonial couldn't eat peanuts. They gave her rashes. The young master of the imperial uncle's household loved banquets most of all, yet he couldn't handle sour or spicy flavors, having a sweet tooth instead. Xu Qingyao appeared to be listening attentively. In truth, her gaze rested on her manicured fingers while her thoughts had long wandered away. I knew her left ear took it in, and her right ear let it out. She remained utterly indifferent to it all. I simply copied everything down and handed it to her in front of father and brother. All I thought was that if something went wrong, I'd make sure she wouldn't drag me into it. Grandmother flipped through the booklet. The more she read, the angrier she became. Until she finally threw the booklet directly at Xu Qingyao's face. Shiyun recorded every detail meticulously. You clearly didn't read it carefully. Now that something's gone wrong, you're telling me it's her fault again. Xu Qingyao bit her lip, her eyes darting rapidly. Soon, she had her excuse ready. "Grandmother, I do remember these things. I still don't recognize all those ladies and young misses clearly. That's why I made a mistake." The banquet was about to begin. Even if grandmother didn't believe her explanation, she could only let it go lightly. "Never mind, you go prepare for the banquet first. Today's guests are all either wealthy or noble, we mustn't make any mistakes." She feared this birthday banquet might bring disaster instead of festivity, yet she consoled herself that with Zhu Chengshuan by her side, nothing could go wrong. Little did she know, Zhu Chengxian had always been a man of strict principles. Yet he doted immensely on this younger sister who had just returned home. Since Zhu Qingyao's return, he allocated her a substantial sum for travel expenses. Thus, Zhu Qingyao began attending daily gatherings with the noble ladies of the capital, quickly becoming the center of their social circle. To outsiders, her father, Zhu Guangju, was the imperial censor and a protege of the prime minister. Yet the prime minister was aging, he would step down in little over a year. Thus, everyone in the capital speculated that Zhu Guangju would become the next prime minister. Moreover, his elder brother Zhu Chengxian was engaged to Princess Joan. Adding to this, Joan consistently stood up for Zhu Qingyao, giving her ample face. As a result, noble ladies also flattered her. She indulged in revelry day after day, dressing more extravagantly with each passing day, yet she only cared about feasting and merrymaking, seldom making serious purchases at the marketplace. It was the servants who informed me. On several occasions after banquets, Zhu Qingyao dismissed her maids, changed into different clothes and quietly went to the gambling den alone. Gamblers, after all, it's only natural to have an itch in the hands. Selling all the valuable items in hand still wouldn't be enough, so embezzling some funds from the birthday banquet seems justifiable. I'm afraid grandmother will be disappointed. This birthday banquet is bound to be extraordinarily lively. In recent years, high-standard banquets in the capital have all featured 8 cold dishes accompanied by 18 hot dishes. Half of these 8 cold dishes were rare seafood or meat dishes. Even the vegetarian options were all uncommon mountain delicacies. But Zhu Qingyao had once boasted that she could do it with just 1/3 of my budget, and out of this 1,000 taels, she had embezzled the majority for herself. Thus, her actual budget was less than 500 taels, under her management. The cold dishes laid out on the table were all vegetarian, and all made from cheap melons, fruits, and greens, a lush green expanse. It cast a greenish hue upon the faces of all the seated guests. Among them, the grandmother's face was startlingly green, yet before the assembled company, she had no choice but to suppress her anger and swiftly replace it with a smile. Zhu Qingyao quickly came to her defense. "Master Li mentioned recently that this year's summer is particularly harsh, so we should eat more fruits and vegetables." Princess John chimed in loudly. "Indeed, even the palace has been serving fruits and vegetables daily these days. The imperial physicians say it's good for health." Only then did the noble ladies pick up their chopsticks and take a few tentative bites. Who would have thought the excitement lasted less than 15 minutes? When the hot dishes were served, they found themselves staring at each other again. The shad fish I had listed, though expensive, it was the freshest available, but Zhu Qingyao, in order to save costs, bought only the stale dead fish that vendors had left over. The appeal of shad lies in its freshness. It's traditionally meant to be steamed plain, yet to mask the staleness of these fish, Zhu Qingyao insisted the cook load them with heavy seasoning. But the cloudy fish eyes and flaky flesh, these pampered noble ladies need not take a single bite. A mere glance was enough to reveal the trickery at play. The bird's nest soup specially prepared for the female guests had been replaced with pear and rock sugar soup, yet even the pears were far from fresh. The pear flesh lacked any sense of translucency. Even more laughable was that crab-stuffed orange dish. Zhu Qingyao cut corners to save money. Substituting inferior ingredients, she chose an extremely large but bland and cheap variety, with an unpleasantly thick rind. The crab placed inside the hollowed-out center was far too small. It looked pathetically empty, so mortifying that grandmother couldn't even lift her head. Beyond that, every dish on the table was served in meager portions. Some portions were so meager they couldn't even fill a plate, requiring lotus leaves to be placed underneath as padding. Yet the Zhu family's dining table was exceptionally large. To ensure the table looked properly laden, she deliberately chose oversized serving dishes. But of these 18 promised hot dishes, only 8 had been served after what felt like an eternity. It landed on the vast desktop, so empty it was almost embarrassing. Princess John noticed the inscrutable expressions of the crowd. Fearing her grandmother and Zhu Qingyao might lose face, she had no choice but to take the lead. Qingyao has returned to the capital from Suzhou, and her taste preferences have changed quite a bit, if any dishes don't suit your tastes. I hope all the ladies and young misses will bear with me for the sake of your future sister-in-law. Come, let's drink, she is a princess. One call brings 100 responses. Only then did faint rustling sounds emerge from the table. John assumed the air of a host and personally toasted everyone. Yet the moment the wine touched their lips, everyone's faces changed in unison. I took a sip. This wasn't the premium daughter's red wine I had selected, but rather the cheapest kind of distilled liquor. It was the type of wine taverns sold to labourers and servants. These noble elites, having only ever drunk fine wine since childhood, felt their throats burning with pain after just one sip of this liquor. The noble ladies who abstained from alcohol were left sipping on mouldy, aged tea. For a moment, each suffered their own particular misery. Yet despite this, no one dared to slight Princess Joan or Zhu Qingyao. Everyone could only brace themselves and take a few bites. They racked their brains to make small talk, not forgetting to praise Zhu Qingyao for her competence. Yet after eating for a long time, though the dishes on the table were few, not a single plate was emptied. Some noble women even chewed a single piece of tofu 30 times, still finding it hard to swallow. The crowd forced smiles. Everyone wished to end this banquet early and go home to fill their stomachs properly. Yet heaven seldom fulfills men's desires. In less than half an hour, someone clutched their belly and screamed in panic, "My stomach hurts so bad." The abdominal pain spread like a flood. Soon, everyone developed the same symptoms. Even the usually elegant noble ladies had their stomachs churning violently. Unable to hold back flatulence, with endless sounds of gas escaping, they could no longer care about saving face. They all hurriedly asked where the privy was, needing to relieve themselves. But there were far too many people who needed to go. The few privies in the Zhu household were simply not enough. In no time at all, someone couldn't hold back their diarrhea in public, causing quite a scene. The first to suffer was none other than Princess Joan, who had been the most vocal in urging others to indulge in wine and meat. She rushed to 3 different privies in succession but failed to secure a single chamber pot. The noble ladies would rather offend her than yield the chamber pot and risk public humiliation. She endured and endured, held it in and held it in, yet still soiled her undergarments. Today she wore a moon-white gown. The summer heat made clothing thin and light. Everything could be seen clearly. Despite Princess Joan's usual arrogance and willfulness, she was still an unwed maiden. Now, utterly humiliated, she could only cover her face and wail uncontrollably. "After all I've done to help your Zhu family out of trouble, this is how you repay me. I'll make sure my father punishes you severely and throws you all in prison." In an instant, the entire Zhu residence was left in complete disarray, reeking unbearably. Zhu Chengxian came running with his hands clutching his stomach, sweat pouring down his face like rain, his pallor ghastly white. It happened that I overheard Princess Joan's words, my face flushed with embarrassment, turning both pale and red. Grandmother was at her wit's end. Being advanced in years, she only took a few bites. The symptoms were much milder. Without any diarrhea, he just came before me with a face as pale as gold paper. "Shiyun, your good-for-nothing sister has ruined our Zhu family. Quick, think of a way to salvage the Zhu family's reputation." Today Zhu Qingyao specifically arranged for me to fan the noble ladies, not allowing me to join the table. Under the guise of claiming that the host personally serving is the highest etiquette, perfectly suits my intentions. As for the feast she prepared, I wouldn't dare eat it anyway. Grandmother understood the intention behind this arrangement perfectly well, yet she didn't speak up for me. She had never liked me. Back when mother passed away early, the Zhu household lacked a proper mistress to manage the inner quarters. That was why she had her personal maidservant teach me some household management skills. But no matter how well I do, she never praised or acknowledged me, always treating me with cold indifference. I once didn't understand the reason, simply assuming she favored sons over daughters. But now I understand. She had long known I wasn't a true Zhu by blood, so she never treated me as family. In my past life, I was framed and imprisoned. She also knew I was wronged, yet she merely let fall a light remark. "Such a morally corrupt person doesn't deserve a proper burial. Just dump the body in a mass grave. You treat me with such coldness. Yet now, you still make me clean up this mess." Fortunately, I came prepared. I held grandmother's hand and said, "As it happens, I've invited physician Lin today to check your pulse. Let's trouble him to first assess the situation and treat everyone now. With so many guests feeling unwell, physician Lin alone certainly can't handle it all. I've already sent word in father's name to summon the doctors from Isin Hall to come quickly." Grandmother exhaled in relief and nodded. "Quite right, Quite right, young Lady Shiyun, you are indeed more reliable. A merchant's daughter truly cannot compare to one raised by our Zhu family. I smiled brightly but remained silent. Imperial physician Lin rushed over as soon as he received the message, yet the courtyard was in such disarray that there was scarcely a place to set foot. He covered his nose, nearly vomiting in front of the noble ladies. He could only take out a sachet and sniff it repeatedly before covering his face with a mask. The noble ladies witnessed this scene. Their faces grew even more sorrowful, and they wept once again. After examining the pulses of 3 noble ladies in succession, Physician Lin frowned. This appears to be food poisoning. They've consumed spoiled food containing toxins, but the pulse readings are chaotic. And the 3 of you are not entirely the same. He was puzzled. Clearly the same food, yet all were poisoned, yet their pulses showed distinct variations. Only after examining the entire table of dishes did Imperial Physician Lin have a sudden realization. So it turns out you all ate different foods. None of these dishes are without issues. He inspected each dish one by one. His frown deepened with every passing moment. This fish is all dead, some probably for days, just stored in an ice cellar. The meat has all gone bad after thawing and not being cooked in time. The jelly isn't made fresh today either. The wood ear mushrooms were soaked overnight and left out. Surely your household's cook knows better than this. And these mushrooms, they may look like rare delicacies, but they're actually poisonous. Upon closer inspection, 7 or 8 dishes turned out to be problematic. Upon hearing this, the noble ladies immediately covered their mouths with handkerchiefs and retched. Old madam, we came to celebrate your birthday, and this is how you treat us. Indeed, when Shiyun sent the invitation saying it would be lively, I specially brought my 8-year-old daughter. Look at how she's been humiliated now. These words were spoken by the wife of the vice minister of the Court of Imperial Sacrifices. The little girl in her arms was already running a high fever, her face flushed red, occasionally vomiting sour fluid. My heart ached with bitterness. I had long sensed that Zhu Qingyao's banquet would end in disgrace, but I never expected all these guests would be poisoned. She's even more unreliable than I imagined. It's one thing for those snobbish noble ladies to make fools of themselves, but dragging innocent children into this suffering is unforgivable. The Zhu family could be considered an aristocratic household, with all their visitors being powerful nobles from the capital. Today's scandalous affair will likely shock the entire capital by tomorrow. After examining the ingredients, Imperial Physician Lin noted that since each person had eaten different dishes, their symptoms also varied. He had no choice but to examine each patient one by one. Fortunately, the physicians from Yixintang arrived in time, filing in to share some of his burden. Grandmother's face turned ashen. Her gaze at Zhu Qingyao was like a knife, as if she wished to carve a piece of flesh from her, but now, in front of everyone, she had no choice but to endure. Zhu Qingyao was the legitimate daughter of the Zhu family. If her reputation were tarnished, it would be difficult for her to maintain her standing among noble ladies in the future. Moreover, Zhu Guangju and Zhu Chengxuan's political careers were flourishing, and they couldn't afford to be implicated. Grandmother was shrewd and calculating. Even though Zhu Qingyao had caused this mess, she still needed to cover for her somewhat, to save her some face. The servants in this household are truly insolent, daring to deceive the newly returned young lady. I deeply regret the suffering you all endured today and will certainly punish the wicked servants to give everyone an explanation. She was blatantly trying to single out Zhu Qingyao. Everyone saw through it clearly, yet no one dared to step forward and expose it, only seething with suppressed anger. But unwillingness was written plainly on every face. Zhu Qingyao's expression relaxed visibly. Then her eyes darted about as if she had thought of something. Immediately she nimbly dropped to her knees, putting on a show of wiping tears. You all know I've just returned home. My family values my competence, which is why they wanted me to handle grandmother's birthday banquet. Little did I know that the wicked servants in the household would bully their master, making trouble at every turn. I had thought to avoid unnecessary trouble, willing to endure some grievances as long as the birthday banquet could be held merrily. Never did I expect that they would go so far as to make all of you suffer, just to teach me a lesson. Amidst the words, a person was brought forward under guard. It was Steward Li from the kitchen. He fell to his knees with a thud. His forehead struck the ground heavily, producing a dull thump. I deserve to die. It was me who swapped Miss Qingyao's ingredients. Just wanted to see her make a fool of herself. Never thought it would come to this. His entire body trembled, yet his voice was strangely clear. But all of this was done under Miss Shiyun's orders. I believed her one-sided story that Miss Qingyao had bullied her. So I wanted revenge. I never thought she was lying to me. Turns out she was just jealous that Miss Qingyao is the Zhu family's true-born daughter. Upon hearing this, Zhu Qingyao immediately refuted the claim. "You wicked servant, how dare you make such wild accusations? Ever since I returned home, my sister has treated me with nothing but kindness. How could she possibly harm me like this?" So she said with her words, yet tears welled in her eyes, her expression full of grievance, yet she deliberately showed fear, timidly raising her eyes to look at me, clearly confirming that I had bullied her. Attempting to throw dirty water on me in full view of everyone. The people in the hall were no fools. The constant bickering between the real and fake heiresses was a common occurrence, yet regardless of who was right or wrong, the Zhu family would inevitably side with the true heiress. Some discerning individuals were already looking at me with pity in their eyes. Indeed, after a moment of contemplation, grandmother spoke with unwavering certainty. "Shiyun, though you are not a Zhu by blood, you were raised by the Zhu family. Qingyao's return will not affect you in any way, yet you incited the servants to deliberately cause trouble. While embarrassing Qingyao is a minor matter, poisoning the guests is truly malicious." I had long anticipated that grandmother would sacrifice me to protect the Zhu family's reputation, but she truly was. My heart still sank. Grandmother simply took Manager Li's word for it and concluded that I was the one scheming behind the scenes. Did I deliberately swap good ingredients for bad ones, intentionally making the guests fall ill and humiliate themselves? Grandmother lowered her head without saying a word, yet silently acquiesced. Zhu Qingyao knelt on the ground, exchanging a glance with me, a faint curve lifted at the corner of her lips. I smiled. "Without evidence now, I cannot plead guilty, but I've just invited the capital prefect to come. Presumably, they'll soon uncover the truth." Zhu Qingyao's smile froze on her face. Grandmother's back wasn't as straight as before either. "Shiyun, how could you involve the capital police in a mere squabble between sisters? I actually think it was quite necessary." The one who stepped forward turned out to be Princess Joan. She had finally found a place to change her clothes. In the scorching summer heat, she was still wrapped in an ankle-length cloak, yet the stench on her body remained impossible to conceal. Her face was contorted with anger, brows furrowed. "Let me find out who made me lose face, and I'll skin her alive and pull out her tendons." The chilling tone made Zhu Qingyao shudder violently. She quickly lowered her head again, not daring to utter a word. The officials from the capital prefecture acted swiftly. It didn't seem like he was suddenly summoned to adjudicate today, but rather as if he had long been fully prepared. Not even a quarter of an hour had passed. Several maids and matrons were already brought down. Their faces and bodies bore wounds, clearly having been interrogated already. They saw the grandmother and immediately knelt down to beg for mercy. The aunt who cooked was in tears. "Madam, this servant is wronged. The shad fish had already rotted. I never wanted to prepare it. But Miss Qingyao said if I didn't find a way to make it edible, she would banish me from the Zhu family." The old woman in charge of cold dishes cried out her grievances. "The wood ear mushrooms and jelly noodles were prepared by this servant yesterday. I shouldn't have taken the chance thinking they might not spoil today." Miss Qingyao sold off half the kitchen staff, leaving each remaining worker to do the job of two. "If we had to prepare everything fresh today, there simply wouldn't be enough time." The warehouse steward knelt and kowtowed. After Miss Qingyao took charge of household affairs, she nearly emptied the warehouse. The prices of the ingredients she purchased show glaring discrepancies. I wanted to inform the master and young master, but she threatened me to know what should remain unsaid. These days she's been constantly consulting with Steward Li. I followed Manager Li several times and discovered he'd been dealing with unscrupulous merchants in the West Market who specialized in offloading stale goods. The dried silver ear mushrooms and fruits he bought were all sulfur fumigated. The crowd buzzed with overlapping voices. Under the intimidating presence of the capital prefecture officials, they held nothing back in their accounts. They completely tore off the Zhu family's mask of respectability. Grandmother's straight back gradually began to bend. Yet Zhu Qingyao found herself unable to defend against the accusations. She collapsed to her knees in despair. Princess John rolled up her sleeves, stepped forward, and delivered a fierce slap across Zhu Qingyao's face. "You're something else, Zhu Qingyao. After all the kindness I've shown you, treating you like my own sister, I've always put you on a pedestal, and this is how you repay me, by humiliating me in public. Just you wait, you'll get what's coming to you." Her exaggerated movements sent waves of her foul odor drifting through the air. She couldn't help but cover her mouth in disgust at herself. The noble ladies beside her fared no better. Though Physician Lin had administered simple antidote pills to them, each one looked ashen-faced and utterly disheveled. They all cursed Zhu Qingyao vehemently when the truth came to light. Before leaving, each of them threw out a final remark: "We won't let this matter rest today." Among them, Zhu Guangju and Zhu Chengxian wore the ugliest expressions. Zhu Chengxian was taken aback because Princess John had rarely shown him such a cold expression just now. Today, she had suffered such humiliation at the Zhu residence. No doubt, whenever she saw Zhu Chengxian in the future, the first thing that would come to mind would be today's incident. Breaking off the engagement was almost a foregone conclusion. Zhu Guangju was even more troubled. The prefect of the capital had long held a grudge against him and was just looking for an excuse. Today, he took this opportunity to thoroughly investigate the entire Zhu residence. He had probably already found plenty of what he was looking for. Moreover, among the male guests, the father and son held such high official positions that everyone showed great respect, forcing themselves to drink heartily and eat more despite their discomfort. Brows furrowed, in the end, they practically turned the courtyard into an open-air latrine. The servants couldn't even keep up with the cleaning. Several elderly civil officials also came today. After all this commotion, I'm afraid it won't be long before they pass away. There will be plenty of bickering in the future. Zhu Guangju was utterly miserable, already envisioning the snowstorm of memorials that would flood the court tomorrow. The Zhu family members each harbored their own ulterior motives. When Zhu Qingyao was thrown into prison, not a single soul spoke up for her. The grandmother was busy with damage control. Compensatory gifts had to be sent to all the guests who attended today's event. Zhu Chengxian changed into clean clothes and hurried off to the Prince of Qi's residence. As a minor official in the Ministry of Rights, his rank was not particularly high. The reason he received such flattery from his colleagues in the capital was largely due to his status as the Prince of Qi's future son-in-law. Now that Princess John has left in anger, naturally he must desperately try to win her back. Meanwhile, Zhu Guangju hurried toward the study after the guests had departed. He was anxious to check his secret letters, worried that the capital prefecture might have discovered something. Amidst the chaos, I withdrew all the savings I had accumulated over the years and purchased a small courtyard along with 2 shopfronts. Then I entrusted someone to help me search for my relatives. Zhu Chengxian once told me that after Zhu Qingyao went missing, he and my father found me together. He found it quite a coincidence. I must have been the sister heaven compensated him with, which is why he brought me home. Yet at the moment of death in my past life, I learned from Zhu Qingyao's own lips. At that time, the imperial astronomers calculated that the calamitous star had left the capital, and the Zhu family happened to have lost a daughter. Fearing that opportunistic individuals might exploit this incident for their own gain, the Zhu father and son took drastic measures. So they stole me, sound asleep, from a passing carriage. My birth mother, it seems, had married into the south. When I returned to the capital to visit family, I lost myself. Half a month later, Zhu Qingyao was released from prison. The trouble she caused was actually just because she embezzled silver. It wasn't intentional poisoning, and no lives were lost. Detaining her was merely a pretext by the capital prefect. The capital prefect had a long-standing feud with Zhu Guangju. I had no wish to trouble the Zhu household over such a matter, but I made a deal with him. I told him about the secret compartment in Zhu Guangju's study. In exchange, he had to help me resolve my household registration, assisting me to move out of the Zhu family register and establish my own separate residency. Zhu Guangju is ostensibly a protégé of the old prime minister, as the old chancellor supported the crown prince, yet in secret, he was actually the third prince's man. Previously, the crown prince had shown bias in the feud between him and the metropolitan governor due to Zhu Guangju's half-step chancellorship. Now the metropolitan governor had obtained evidence. At last, I can bring down this old rival, and immediately agreed without hesitation. After the incident, the old prime minister realized that despite a lifetime of shrewdness, he had placed his trust in the wrong person. Furious, he repeatedly denounced him before the emperor. Moreover, those who had been offended at the birthday banquet submitted memorials one after another. In just a few days, Zhu Guangju was transferred to the Hanlin Academy, a promotion in name but a demotion in reality. He was effectively kicked out of the political power center. As for Zhu Chengxian, he wasn't faring any better either. After suffering this humiliation, Princess John found him utterly detestable. It happened that the heir of Prince Hezhong arrived in the capital and fell in love with Princess John at first sight. Prince Qi was delighted to see this development. He worked tirelessly every day to bring the two together. The prince's beauty was no less than Zhu Chengshuan's, and his literary talent surpassed Zhu's even more. He excelled in both civil and martial arts, with remarkable skills. Princess John couldn't help but waver in her resolve. She took the initiative to have Prince Qi annul her engagement for her. The King of Qi had long intended this and gave Zhu Chengxian no opportunity, forcefully annulling the engagement. Deprived of the King of Qi's mighty protection, Zhu Chengxian had no choice but to readjust to his status as a fifth-rank official. Those who once fawned over this father and son pair, now they've all turned their backs and are targeting them at every turn, especially Zhu Guangju, the imperial censor, who prides himself on being upright and incorruptible. He frequently submits memorials impeaching other ministers. Now he's suffering the backlash, being impeached day after day. The emperor grew weary just hearing his name, yet more troubles were still to come for the Zhu family. After old Madame Zhu had selected apology gifts for each family, she discovered there wasn't enough silver to pay for them. When I went to check the storage room, I found only large furniture and some worthless trinkets remaining. Everything else had long been cleared out. Her first suspicion immediately fell upon me. However, on the day I handed the keys over to Zhu Qingyao, we had the steward conduct a full inventory. These things were all lost while in Zhu Qingyao's possession. She racked her brains but still couldn't figure it out. How could a sheltered young woman like Zhu Qingyao possibly spend so much? Moreover, she wasn't even familiar with the capital city. How did they manage to exchange items that many pawnshops wouldn't accept for silver coins? When Zhu Qingyao returned again, her circumstances were different from the last time. Back then, the Zhu father and son had welcomed her with genuine affection and full hearts of joy. This time, however, they both wore expressions of anger. Floods ravaged the west, war plagues the north. The imperial astronomers have calculated that this summer's turmoil stems from the return of the calamitous star to the capital. Zhu Guangju has been warned repeatedly. This ominous title seems destined to fall upon Zhu Qingyao. The entire Zhu family may well face catastrophe. He had the intention to bribe, but bribing requires silver. Zhu Chengxian was also frustrated. The river prince's heir spent money like water, keeping Princess John delighted every single day. Zhu Chengxian was determined to compete with his romantic rival. Unfortunately, his pockets were empty. He couldn't even afford an expensive gift now. Their meager affection for Zhu Qingyao had long since faded. Now they only wanted to reclaim the family fortune, and grandmother was filled with resentment. She caught a chill after the birthday banquet, and after taking medicine, her condition only worsened. What used to be a minor ailment that would clear up in 3 to 5 days, now, even after half a month, she still hasn't recovered. She couldn't help but recall the master's prophecy that this calamity was fated in her destiny. The livelier the birthday banquet, the healthier she would be. Conversely, if the celebration turned out to be such a mess, wouldn't that mean, the more she thought about it, the more frightened she became? She harbored venomous hatred for this ill-starred returnee. She only waited to recover the silver coins, then sought a grand ritual from the master to dispel her own misfortune. Each person had their own thoughts. When the words "the money's all gone" escaped Zhu Qingyao's lips, the faces of all three darkened. Our Zhu family has so much silver, at least tens of thousands of taels. You spent it all in just half a month. Zhu Qingyao's face was full of nonchalance. Is that a lot? I could lose it all in just 1 hour at the gambling den. So what if I spent all this money? All these years I've been alone and miserable, suffering through hardships. It's all your debt to me. Besides, it took you all these years just to save up this little family fortune, and now you complain about my spending. Maybe you should reflect on whether you've worked hard enough. Grandmother was furious at these words. Clutching his chest, he spat out a mouthful of blood, but Zhu Chengxian refused to believe it. Yanking Zhu Qingyao's hair and demanding she hand over the money, the siblings tumbled into a fierce fight. Having seen enough of the commotion, I quietly gathered my belongings. With the newly acquired household registration document in hand, I left the Zhu family. My shop is located in the East Market. One sells flowers, the other sells wine. These were precisely the two businesses from my foster mother's dowry. After years of management, I've gained some insights. Within just over a month, it began turning a profit. The Zhu family, quiet for some time, showed new signs of activity. This summer brought both natural disasters and man-made calamities. It seemed as though unrest had spread everywhere in the capital. The emperor grew increasingly obsessed with astrology, convinced that a calamitous star had descended upon the capital. The Zhu family bore the brunt of it. Many ministers, fearing the disaster might reach them, used every means to pin the blame on Zhu Qingyao as the harbinger of doom. She was thrown into prison and immediately beheaded. On the day of her execution, I took a distant glance. It was my way of returning the courtesy from our past life when she witnessed my own death with her own eyes. As for Zhu Guangju and Zhu Chengxian, father and son, They were exiled to Lingnan and had to make the journey on foot. The journey is long and arduous, with hardships at every step. These scholar officials of theirs, few can endure to reach the destination, almost all perish along the way. I lost all interest and had no desire to look. On the day old Madame Zhu received the news, she hanged herself with a white silk cord. The Zhu father and son were driven onto the road. They didn't even have time to collect her body. I thought about it. I found someone to buy a thin coffin and gathered her remains. In my youth, I had once lived in her quarters, though she never liked me, but in the end, I did learn many principles and skills from her. These things will sustain me to live well in this lifetime, so it is. Consider it repayment for her kindness. When withered trees greet spring, I finally obtained a portrait. It was of my mother. The man told me to head southwest, and I would find her in 7 days. Suddenly, I felt a pang of unease, calculating in my mind when to close the shop and set off. A fresh willow branch sways before my eyes. I look up. The person before me smiles gently, their kindness radiating like warm sunlight, exactly like the person in the painting.